Popped in with
Yes,
Well, I guess,
ma'am.
and then Memorial River.
I've got to read
both
that.
They're
there.
both closed, yeah. This way.
Well, I can hardly hear because I'm in my pocket.
Cause I think we're
And we come to the late class.
Well, they have equipment here for the gardens, they just use the garden equipment here.
No.
Ready to play with him.
No, the teacher's not in there yet, so.
By the time you have church and work.
Or do you go buy more
Right.
stuff? You can for channels.
Yeah, oh,
Well, true,
freeze back everywhere, fall, maybe, I don't know.
true.
Nowhere.
Where to go?
We can do that.
Did y'all read
That she did taco soup.
Jeez, have you ever been people play work?
That's right here.
You don't shower.
That microphone.
Why you play it?
We can.
I like it.
That was great. I thought it was Kathy's phone, but
They
it's
don't
very
put
soft.
it in,
And remind us.
So I can
she
play with
has
it.
her call
It's
back.
just taking
Sounds
big
good.
things.
And she
So
said,
this is your job about
Being
three times a
first
day.
baseman.
The panel is on this house.
where they go, so
We're not
they
using
go
it.
this way and down and just narrowed it down.
So that should,
Yeah. Yeah,
you have to cook it? No, that's fine. I got your money. Well,
No, it's a tabletop.
we're on.
Well, you know like D&D's got prefix and stuff?
No, it's still be a while.
It's like a combat game. You have armies that shoot.
I know, yeah, freestyle, good.
They use so many points. It's literally searching for you fight each other. Yeah, like the makes tactics. Sometimes it's figure out what armies you have.
That's what I meant by that, because he's been on there for a while, I was like, well, it's probably gonna freeze and stuff.
You can play easier on
Where's our teacher?
You went to go talk to the youth.
Oh.
Who's ready? We are the youth. You are the youth? We are the youth. That's what I said.
I would say that, yeah, that's fine.
I need to go play, I need to go to a practice.
But,
Well, I don't wanna be happy like
The blue people, the political,
Yeah, now.
First I'd ever been, I was like, bro, yeah, never played that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I think
Could you show me card? I saw it like a huge card
Yeah.
Wait,
Played Yu-Gi-Oh back in the day. I didn't play that all the stuff sacrifice. Also, like, it's really just a little watching video, and y'all Dark Magician
I was looking, and the reason I say that is.
you know bad call.
which game?
So maybe we should use
Yeah, like, Dark Magician is not villain. In the anime, Yabi Yumi is like super Dark Magician. Like, when Blue Eyes White Girl is like, so I love Red Eyes Black Girl.
Come on in.
Okay.
We're on your time, so don't worry.
What? You are on my time, aren't you? Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I was with the youths for a split second. Do I need this?
That's up to you.
I think that microphone is supposed to not
Okay.
let me have to do this. Okay. Welcome. We are going to continue our study with Genesis. I really appreciate you guys being here. I know for some of you it was not super duper easy, but still really glad you're here. Genesis, we are going to be in Genesis chapter 6. If you want to get your Bibles out, I would really encourage you to be in Genesis chapter 6. We are going to read quite a large chunk of text like we usually do, and then do our usual analysis and see what we can come up with in terms of our Eastern perspective that we're looking at. If you will notice, we have skipped a section of text to get to Genesis 6 and the Noah story. It is a genealogy. I really hate giving in to that Western mindset that the genealogies are the most boring part. Because they're not. I just don't think we're ready for that yet. There will be genealogies that we will analyze that I promise we will find nuggets and pearls of wisdom in. But this one just came at us a little bit too quickly, and so I want to jump over it for a minute and then find some more genealogies that we can get a lot out of. But for now, we are going to skip to Genesis chapter 6. And once again, this is a story that we have heard about 1,000 times, if not more. It is the Noah and the flood story. And when we talk about the lullaby effect that we talked about several weeks ago, where you hear a story enough over and over and over again, it seems like the details, especially the weird details that we tend to gloss over, kind of fade into the background. And so what I want us to do whenever we read this text is what we've been doing all this time, is try and look at it as if it's the very first time we're reading it. Try your best to make it a blank slate and figure out what is weird, what doesn't make sense, and what repeats itself. And I actually want to add another question that we have been talking about throughout our study, but now that I want you to put it in the forefront before we read, is what kind of God are we dealing with? Okay, remember we've been rating God's fatherhood on a scale of 1 to 10 basically every week. And many times at the beginning of the stories, it looks like he doesn't rate super well. And this is exactly a kind of Eastern question that we want to be asking is, what kind of God are we dealing with? First off, a couple of questions to get us warmed up. What is a huge project that you really messed up on that you had to start over? I once wrote a 25-page brief for the wrong case and had to throw it away. Like, not even the other lawyer could use it because the case was already done. I don't know why it was on my desk. That was a question I had from my boss. I'm over it, though. I'm fine. What else? Anyone else have a huge mess up?
I was on a work trip, and it's one of those compressed time frames where you're working 12-hour or even 16-hour days.
Yeah.
And you've got to do the paperwork after you're done for the day, and so it can even go longer. And so I had done everything that I thought was correct, and when I get in the next morning, I had done everything completely wrong. And there was another day of survey, and another, so everything piled up really fast. So then to do that first day all over.
Right, yeah. So sometimes when you mess up real big, you get behind and things start spiraling out of control. Okay, yeah. Anyone else?
When I was in the Army, I was a medic, and so we were going through this expert field medical badge training.
Yeah.
And it's like something you get to do once a year, or try it once a year. And I got all the way through this training, and one of the last nights was nighttime land navigation, and I messed up that part. And had to start all the way back over.
All the way over. Okay, yeah, okay.
That was deflating.
Yes, well, exactly what you want to hear from a military professional. Yes.
Yeah, this was before you were born, but me and Mom decided to paint our first house, and it was on a Memorial weekend, and we painted like crazy and painted it. She wanted it white, so we painted the whole bottom of it white. She wanted dark green gutters. I remember painting dark green gutters on Sunday night and looking to the west and the storm came up and we got a toad strangler of a storm that night and then washed all that green paint down.
So rain really messed up your plans. Okay, that's a really great segue. What makes the difference between man and beast again?
We're making God's image.
Okay, made in God's image, which gives us the ability to what? Say enough or control our desires. Okay? So we talked a little bit about how both of the narratives that we looked at, the Adam and Eve story and the Cain and Abel story, they both boiled down to one essential question, which was, are you going to choose the path of an image bearer or the path of the beast? Okay? And we saw that in both of those instances, Adam and Eve chose the path of the beast, literally tempted by the beast that brought them down that path. And then we looked at Cain and Abel. And Cain was given a warning about the fact that he was on the path of the beast. And then his curse, or his consequences for that, were even more so. We actually see those consequences radiating out over all of humanity. I told you last week there was that Cain's mark was the mark of the beast. And we learned in Revelation that whenever you see the mark of the beast, that means everybody is acting like a beast and the end is nigh. Well, I don't think you thought it was going to come this quickly. But guess what? In Genesis chapter 6, everybody is acting like a beast and the end is nigh. All right, so if you have your Bibles, let's go ahead and get into the text. We are skipping another portion. I know we're skipping the Nephilim thing, the sons of God and the sons of man. I know I will. If we do spiritual beings again, we will rehash that. But just for now, know that that's a little too hot to handle for our purposes tonight. I promise we are going to get into enough good stuff to last you a lifetime. So we are going to start in Genesis 5. We're actually just going to go through chapter 7. We're going to tackle chapter 8 in pieces. And then we're actually going to look at chapter 9 too. So, got a lot to cover. Verse 5, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him in his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence, and God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to the cubit above, and set the doors of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds. Of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind, 2 of every sort shall come into you and keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Then the Lord said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens, also male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals and of animals that are not clean, and of the birds of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days of the waters, the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. And the windows of heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. And they and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep, and all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts of all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals, creeping things, and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those that were with him on the ark. And the water prevailed on the earth 150 days. All right, a lot going on there. We didn't even cover all of it. So tell me, what's weird? What doesn't make sense? And what repeats itself?
Clean, like the finding of what's clean and unclean. So it was repeated a lot, like clean and clean, unclean animals.
Yeah, so there's this weird thing about clean and unclean animals, and that begs the question, how do they know what is clean and unclean at this point? Okay, so, all right.
No, that's 7 and 2. Why 7 of the clean and then just 2 of the unclean?
Right, yeah, okay, so we've got, even more so, we've got a lot of numbers in this story. There's just a ton of numbers. Yeah, there's 40, there's 7, there's 500, there's 150, what?
600.
There's 600. We got a lot of numbers flying around here, okay?
The phrase breath of life is repeated over and over.
Oh, okay, the breath of life is repeated over and over and over again. Okay, wonder what that could mean.
The word corrupt is used a frequent amount.
Corrupt, even corruption of the flesh is used about 100 times. Yeah, it's actually harder than it looks to read this story because it actually repeats itself a lot. You lose your place. You're like, didn't I just say that? You're like, yes, I did, but it's even down further in the paragraph. Anything else? What's weird and what doesn't make sense? And what repeats itself?
When it covered the earth, if it covers all the mountains, they'd be in really, really thin air.
Okay, yes! Okay, so how are they breathing? Yeah, I know guys that have died on Everest because they couldn't breathe. Yeah. Uh-huh.
If we're trying to figure out who God is, then who are these sons of God?
Okay, so you're going to the place that we skipped.
Oh,
okay.
shoot.
That's okay, that's okay. Yes,
so sorry. I did not.
Yes, yeah. So there is this like sons of God, sons of man narrative. Yeah, we can talk about that later. What else is weird?
They obviously didn't eat the animals.
Yeah, well, and actually in chapter 9, it brings up an interesting point. At the beginning of chapter 9, God actually allows them to eat animals for the first time. So it does seem like up until this point, at least God's people were vegetarians. I don't know what that says. Some people are going to say that it was like a concession of God, because what is the problem with man right now? Corruption, specifically what kind?
Violent.
Violent! Violent corruption. Okay, yes, so there is violence all over the earth. And tell me, our last story from last week, what was the ending of that story?
Death and exile.
Murder, exile, violence, okay? So that is obviously spread around, all right? So there is a connection there. You're supposed to say, it's like, okay, Cain's big problem was that he killed somebody. Now, what's the whole world doing? Killing everybody, okay? So we've got a problem, all right? What else?
It says Noah walked with God. There wasn't a whole lot of guys in the Bible that they mentioned actually walked with God.
Yes, yeah. So we have this weird talk about, like, what does a relationship with God look like? We only have one other person that is described as walking with God. Anyone? Up until this point. Abraham's later, so we have, from this point, Enoch. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. I think that's Abraham's great-great-grandfather, I believe we decided last class. Okay, so walking with God, what exactly does that mean at this point? What else? What else is weird?
Fountains of the deep opening up when the flood happened.
Okay, yeah, so a worldwide flood by itself is kind of weird. It's a little bit startling. Okay, yeah, so a worldwide flood. What else?
God repented of making mankind.
Yes! Okay, so how does an omniscient, all-knowing God regret doing something? Okay, excellent. What else? In chapter 1, what did God call his creation?
Very good.
Very good.
Is that reflected in this story? Not to my eyes, it's not. Okay, so we have a God that calls his creation good, and then immediately, or not immediately, he gives it some time, but he destroys it, okay? What else? I think we're dancing around a big question that I think we're afraid to ask. And it goes with the idea of what kind of God are we dealing with here?
A holy God.
What?
A holy God.
Okay, yeah. How does that manifest itself in this story?
He regrets that he put him on the earth.
Okay, so he regrets, and so what does he do?
Wipes them out.
Kills it.
Okay, so the question that I have about this story is that God just got on to his creation for killing. And what is his response?
Kill them all.
Homicidal maniac, okay? So we need to ask ourselves the very, very real question, what kind of God are we dealing with? Because God has just committed what is basically the first human genocide.
Murder.
So what are we doing? Yeah.
I was just going to comment, it goes in the New Testament, but it essentially goes like, treat others how you want to be treated. If you're going to like kill somebody, I'm going to show you what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll show you killing somebody. Yeah, I'll show you how to do it right. Okay, so maybe a little bit of that. Okay, maybe a little bit. All right.
It does seem interesting though, because God made it a point to say He's going to wipe off every living thing on the land. It's very specific. I mean, obviously we know that Noah and his family got on the ark, but it was like everybody else that's left on the earth, going to wipe them out.
Yeah.
So if you stay connected to the ground, as if bloodshed, had gone into the earth, and He was cleansing that.
Okay.
But
I love that you just said that the bloodshed went into the earth, because I just made this connection. What?
The blood cries out from the earth.
Abel's blood cries out from it. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Yeah.
So I have the question now, like, why did the animals? I know the flooding, like, is for the people reason, but why were the animals affected as well? My brain's like, why is that? That's weird. Like, the animals are described as like non. I don't know. I don't know what the word is. Can't think of the word.
Yes. So animals are innocent in this.
Yes.
Like what did the deer do that they had, the majority had to drown? Yeah. That is a question, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna answer.
Like, could I try to answer just for fun?
No. I don't want you to steal my thunder. My thunder was already stolen at 4:30. Sort of. Okay, so we have these questions about how did this story really play out? Why did this story really play out? What kind of God are we dealing with here? One thing that was brought about in the 430 class that we kind of gloss over, and I think this is the lullaby effect. What's with the details? Okay, like if I am telling a story about a guy who built a really big boat, if I want to tell a really boring story, I would tell you the measurements of that boat. If I wanted to tell an exciting story, I would say the boat was as big as Tennessee, or whatever. Instead, we get these really weird details, and even Melvin brought up the fact that it talks about like pitch. Like, and he's a roofing man, and he says like that's what we use today, which is kind of interesting. So it's like this technology isn't revolutionary or anything. So there's a lot of details in there that are kind of weird. How many times do you think he says, and Noah and his wife and his children and their wives? About 1,400 times, it seems like. Okay, so there's a lot of things, a lot of weird details that we want to hone in on. And for the first time this week, we're going to actually look a little bit outside the text. We need a little bit more historical context to see why this book was written the way it was. So, if you ever took like a highfalutin literature class, and Noah and the flood came up, you are probably familiar with the fact that Noah is not the only flood narrative that we have. In fact, it is really not that unique in terms of cultural stories. In this time, especially in this ancient time that we're talking about, there were quite a few flood stories. Now, historians are actually going to debate this, but it seems like this is a case of what they're going to call cultural memory, which means that an event happened that was so ancient that no one really knows the specifics of how it happened, but everybody knew that it happened. And so everyone has stories about the event. This is true of the flood story, the flood narrative. Across the cultures of this time, almost everyone has a flood story. If you go to Bible college or have someone that gets kind of caught up with this, a lot of times they're going to say, well, all of those flood stories are just copycats of Genesis. They're going to say, no, Noah came first and everybody else copied it. I'm not going to say that's untrue, but it is deceptive. Almost certainly, the Genesis narrative is later than some of the other flood stories. If you know about this, what is the most famous, probably, other flood story? Anyone know? The Legend of Gilgamesh. Okay? What's interesting about the Legend of Gilgamesh, it is a Sumerian tale, and anyone know who lives in Sumeria right after this story, actually? Comes from the town of Ur. Abraham. If you're Hebrew, it's Ur, and if you're in the South, it's Ur. Ur is a town of Sumeria. Gilgamesh, that story, is actually from Sumeria, not Samaria, Sumeria, S-U-M. And so already we know that these tales are surrounding the people at this time. They know that there is a flood narrative going around. The Legend of Gilgamesh is probably the oldest one we have, and it almost certainly predates the writing down of Genesis. I don't want that to throw you, okay? Because a lot of Christians, that's going to freak them out, and so they have to run away from it. And I think that's the opposite of what God wants us to do. In fact, I think God wants us to take all the facts that we have at our disposal and lean into the tension. Instead of thinking about that they're copycats of Genesis, what if instead we ask the question, what if God is trying to tell us something by telling a familiar story of the time but in a different way. This is actually not the last time God is going to use this kind of device. In fact, when Abraham sacrifices Isaac, one of the key elements of that story is God is trying to tell Abraham what kind of God he is. And that is a God that does not revel in human sacrifice. Why might God want Abraham to know that?
Because he's not a killer.
Uh-huh.
Because there's other gods that do.
Because Abraham is surrounded by a culture of gods that love human sacrifice. So God is trying to promote this narrative that says, I'm not that kind of God. What's really fun about our day and age is that the Epic of Gilgamesh, if you ever get a chance to read however much we have of it, I would much more compare it to like the Odyssey. Like it's a story about a hero who goes through all these specific trials, and the flood story is actually not that big a part of it. It is a little blip in the Epic of Gilgamesh. But here are some clips from that story, and I want you to hear if they ring any bells. So once again, this is from the Legend of Gilgamesh, that first paragraph. In those days the world teemed, the people multiplied, the world bellowed like a wild bull, and the great God was roused by the clamor. Enlil heard the clamor, and he said to the gods in council, the uproar of mankind is intolerable, and sleep is no longer possible by reason of the babel. So the gods agreed to exterminate mankind. Okay, why do the gods want to kill mankind in the Epic of Gilgamesh?
They can get some sleep.
They are so annoying. Oh my word, they won't stop talking. Why does God want to punish humanity?
Evil.
For violence against themselves. Second paragraph. These are the measurements of the bark that you shall build her. Let her beam equal her length. Let her deck be roofed with the vault that covers the abyss. Then take up into the boat the seed of all living 24 creatures. I don't know the 24 creatures. I really don't. I don't know if anybody does. But what does that sound like? Instructions for how to build a boat. Not nearly as specific, and I think that's the point. It's like, build the ceiling for as big as the sky. Okay, yeah. But it's specific, and it talks about getting the animals, okay? This is actually what we wanted to name Finn, but the parents didn't like it. Nergal pulled out the dam from the nether waters. A stupor of despair went up to the heaven when the god of the storm turned daylight to darkness, when he smashed the land like a cup. One whole day the tempest raged, gathering fury as it went. It poured over the people like the tides of battle. Man could not see his brother, nor the people be seen from heaven. Even the gods were terrified at the flood. They fled to the highest heaven. They crouched against the walls, cowering like curs. Okay, what is the difference between Yahweh God and these dudes?
Cowards.
Okay, first of all, they're scaredy cats. Yeah. What else? They lost control and got scared. Okay? So, what's interesting about these three excerpts, and there's more that actually apply to the Genesis narrative as well, but what's interesting about these are they keep rubbing up against the Genesis narrative and begging us to ask the question, what's the difference? What's the difference between how the gods are portrayed in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the God that's portrayed in Genesis? We can clearly see that our God can control and sets the parameters. Second, our God doesn't destroy us out of annoyance, but out of love. If that makes any sense. And we know that our God knows how to build a boat. And why I want us to lean into this is because a large part of this story and why it is written the way it is written is to be a counterpoint to all the other flood stories. The underlying question that we've been asking is, what kind of God do we serve? And God is trying to answer that by saying, well, I'm definitely not like these guys.
One thing I do think is interesting is in verse 11, it says that the springs of the great deep burst forth and the floodgates of the heavens were open. And it's interesting because within, I don't know how many years of science, they found more water under the crust of the earth.
Yeah.
And I was watching one program and it was saying that a lot of the asteroids and stuff that, and comets and whatnot that get close, they actually have a lot of the same elements that Earth has.
Yeah.
And it's very possible that during this event, if water did burst forth from, it could have, some of it could have went out the atmosphere and it's just returning back. But it's another thing. But it's just very interesting to see that water is still underneath the earth and very well could have come out.
Yeah, so there's some archaeology that says that this story could have happened for real. I like that you brought up that the waters burst forth from under it. It actually, when it floods, it says that they burst forth and then what? Then they close. Okay? So the water from the earth is closed and dry land appears. What does that sound like?
Doing a reverse of his creation.
Do you smell that? Do you smell it, Declan?
Do I smell what?
I smell a chiasm too, Declan. I really, really do. Because you're exactly right. We are talking about, there is a distinct parallel here between creation and what's going on here. Let's keep going because I think I can explain it even better with my words. Okay, with Genesis 6, let's recalibrate for a second. Okay, the world is filled with kamas, or violence. This isn't just sin. It is a systemic, coercive breaking of the world's peace. We talked about that the two sins of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel are in the world right now. First off, we have the lust of the eyes, and that's actually part of the section that we skipped, was the sons of God have lust for the women of the earth. So you've got the lust of the eyes coming back. And then you've got violence. Then you've got the murder. Both of the sins that corrupted the world are now back with a vengeance. The Hebrew concept of regret, God relents or grieves, it's naham. And in the Hebraic lens, this isn't God admitting a mistake, but a parent's heart breaking because the project of shalom has been utterly rejected by humanity. It is that, I don't think there's not a huge chunk of you that are parents, but hopefully you will never have to experience this in your life, but it is the sorrow and grief of a parent giving their children the faith and the truth and them rejecting it. That is the grief that God is going through. It almost makes him wish that he had never had children at all, because they're not accepting what he's given them. In ancient Near Eastern thought, the sea represents chaos and non-being. Literally what Declan was saying. This flood is the uncreation. God allowing the boundaries he set in Genesis 1 to collapse. Remember, the first 4 days of creation are actually a little bit more organization than they are anything. The only thing that really is stated to be created in those first 4 days is light. And it's said in a way that's actually separation of light from darkness. The other days are separation of earth and sky, land and water. Those boundaries that he set up in day 1 through 4 are collapsing. And now everything is dark and full of water. Almost like we're back where? At the beginning. So, if the story is bending in on itself, what do we expect to happen next? Creation. Okay, so now we're cooking. Alright, chiasm, yay! Alright, so the fun part about this chiasm is you can get to it in a number of different ways, but they all end in the same place. The first part is you can use the numbers that are scattered around. If you mirror the 500 and 500 and the 7s and the 7s and the 20s and the 20s, you can get to this chiasm. I prefer the narrative route. That's just easier for me. So it's God resolves to destroy the world. God resolves not to destroy the world. Entry into the ark, exit from the ark. The waters rise, the waters recede, with the center being, someone read Genesis 8 verse 1. The whole thing.
But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided.
Okay, first problem. What's the first problem with that verse?
Did he forget Noah?
Okay, yeah, whoopsie daisy. I forgot why I was doing this. That guy in the boat, that's right. I should do something about that. Okay, probably not.
Has it been 150 days?
Right, yeah, has it been 150 days already? My alarm didn't go off. Okay, so, yeah, we have that problem. Read that last part again.
And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided.
What? My brain doesn't function like that. It's like wind blowing. Where's the water go?
Oh, I was like, you can't understand the wind blowing? But now I understand. I understand.
Water going.
Okay, I think...
But Lou.
But, yeah, okay.
Different elements right there.
Declan, take us home.
Okay, so I was going to say, at the initial creation, the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And from what I've read and understood, that word is ruach, breath. So the wind coming over might be another creation. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Ruach is an onomatopoeic word for breath. You can kind of feel it whenever you say it, like ruach. It's kind of like breath, but it can also be translated as wind, breath, or spirit. In the Hebraic mind, these are not three different things, they are one force. So if I were to say, and then God sent a spirit over the waters and dry land appeared, where does your head go? If it doesn't go to Genesis 1:1, then I'm going to be really sad. Okay? So what should that start then?
All over again.
Creation 2.0. All right? So the story begins with a ruach of God hovering over the face of the deep. The chaos waters in Genesis 8:1, at the absolute center of the chiasm, God sends a ruach over the face of the earth to make the waters recede. The point, this is a literary bookend. The author is signaling that God is doing creation 2.0. The same spirit that brought order out of the original darkness is now bringing order out of the flood. While cosmos is the breath of man gone wrong, destructive and hot, the ruach of God is the breath that creates space for life to breathe again. The Eastern perspective, God doesn't just wish the water away, he breathes life back into a dead world. The drying of the earth is a labor of love, not just a physical process. When did Adam become alive?
When God breathed.
Doing the same thing. God breathed life into Adam, and so now he is breathing life back into the world after destruction. In Genesis 2, oh, I just said that, thanks. All right. So, if we're going through creation, and it's pretty easy to pick out, I didn't put it up here, I just put kind of the highlights, but you can pretty easily pick out the days of creation that go next. So it's like, okay, the waters are separating, the darkness recedes, the plants come back, the animals exit the ark. And so you see day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. What's next? What's next after day 6? Sing the song if you have to. Okay, rest! Okay, specifically, Sabbath. All right? So everyone who is reading this story with a Jewish mindset expects Sabbath. What is Sabbath? What was the message of that? We have a God who knows when to say enough. Enough, in that context, creation. We have a God who knows when to say enough, creating. So we expect Sabbath. Instead, we get this. In Genesis 9, then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds and will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth. Oh, sweet Moses, did I read that 3 times? No, it's all one thing. What repeats itself? Rainbow. What else?
Earth.
Earth.
Covenant.
Covenant. Remember. Okay? All of those things. All right, so let's talk about those things. So, the first point that we need to get, and I think a lot of times we get this one pretty okay. In the Genesis story, God knew when to stop creating. He knew the Sabbath was to say, we're done creating, we're done working. One of the main points of the flood story is that we also have a God that knows when to stop destroying. We have a God who knows how to say enough on both ends of the spectrum. This is why those 2 stories parallel one another. It's because they're trying to tell the same story in a different way. We have a God that knows when to say enough in any instance. Okay? The next thing we need to know, the passage kept repeating the Hebrew word berit, or covenant. God will continually remember his covenant with man through his bow. What is interesting is there is no Hebrew word for rainbow. It is just bow, like the weapon, not the thing you put on a present. So if you imagine a rainbow as a weapon, which way is it pointing? Up. Okay, so where is the arrow going? Up. Towards the heavens. Towards who specifically? God. Okay. Once again, we are asking our question of what kind of God are we serving? What's interesting is that there is another legend that is circulating around, in fact, another flood story. It is the Enuma Elish. And what that God does is he uses bows to slay enemies and then hangs them up as trophies of their power. Basically to send the message that if you mess up again, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it right this time. Okay? That is the culture surrounding this story. A battle warrior's bow aimed at humanity, saying, if you mess up again, I'm going to release this dude. So, what is God trying to tell us with the bow not being pointed at us, but at him?
To protect us?
He said, you guys can't do it, I'm going to do it myself. You guys cannot rescue yourselves. I'm going to take the hit.
Okay, so we have a little bit of maybe some foreshadowing here. When you hang a bow in the clouds, which way does the arc point? It points upward, away from the earth. If the string were pulled and the arrow released, it would strike the heart of heaven, not humanity. God is making a covenant of vulnerability. He is laying down his weapon and aiming it at himself rather than ever using the flood as a solution for violence again. What's the deal with all the remembering? We picked that out. We said they keep talking about remembering. In Hebrew, the word is zakar. Remembering isn't recalling forgotten information, but is acting on behalf of. When God remembers, the rescue begins. There is a concept that is even more fleshed out in the Abraham story that we'll get to. But right now, some background information. The main kind of treaty at the time that we're talking about is called a Caesarean vassal treaty. What is a vassal?
A subject.
A subject of a what?
A lord.
Yeah, a higher or a stronger authority, okay? So in its bare bones terms, Oklahoma is a vassal to the United States, okay? And in that relationship, what do we have to do for the United States? Yeah, April 15th is coming up. Tax season is open, all right? So we pay taxes. We don't rebel. We do the whole good citizen thing. In return for what?
Protection.
Protection, yes, okay. So if Russia invades Oklahoma, which is something they would certainly want to do, the United States, because of our deal, would come to our defense. In ancient cultures, a lot of times the Caesarean would try to get out of its contract. For instance, if a vassal was being attacked by a neighbor, the Caesarean would not automatically come to their defense a lot of times, but instead the vassal would have to, through letters or a messenger, say, hey, we're being attacked. Don't forget, we pay you tribute. We've followed your laws. We've been your subject for this many years. We're reminding you of your covenant. We are reminding you that we are yours and you're supposed to come to our defense. What is God saying here that's different than that?
He's the one reminding them that he's protecting them.
Even if you don't, I will. That's at the heart of a covenant relationship. Is even if you don't, I will. God is saying that even if your every inclination turns to violence again, it won't matter. Because I'll remember even if you don't. In fact, I'm going to put a sign in the clouds. Clouds being mentioned 7 times. Covenant being mentioned 7 times. That I will remember. Yeah.
I have a question. Is that the same word used when Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me?
It's hard because it's not a direct translation because Jesus is speaking in Aramaic and we're in ancient Hebrew. But kind of the same idea. That's a very neat connection that I haven't made. I'll have to think on that because I like that connection. I just don't know how I want to talk about it.
And also, I mean, it would be, you wouldn't necessarily need a stronger person requiring a covenant of a weaker person.
No, and that's the specific Caesarean
Right.
vassal
And
covenant.
I say
Yeah.
that in light of God being the one making the covenant.
Yeah.
He didn't need to.
Right, yeah.
With humankind, but rather he extended that to us before we thought to ask that of God.
Yeah.
You know, like, God, please don't destroy us again and do with us what you will.
Right,
know,
yes.
and
Yeah.
Rather God extended. That's the kind of God that he is, that he says that even if you don't, then, you know, I
Yeah. And because what we expect of gods that are surrounding, especially this culture, is if you're violent again, I'll flood you, is really what we expect. Instead, he says, even though the inclination of man's heart is evil, I will never do this again. A king usually signs a treaty with a show of force. God hangs his bow pointing upward. God takes the penalty clause of the treaty onto himself. He's the first king in history to sign a treaty by aiming the weapon at his own heart. Pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's get cooler. Super duper cool point, and we've kind of alluded to this before, is the Jesus connection. By the time we reach the New Testament, humanity has broken every covenant conceivable. According to the legal terms of a Caesarean treaty, the arrow should be released. However, because the bow was already pointed toward heaven in Genesis 9, the judgment falls upward. At the cross, the king takes the arrow that the vassal deserved. There is a really interesting connection between the bow and the cross. Not only is there a linguistic and visual parallel between the two, but a bow, an instrument of death and war, is transformed into a sign of shalom or peace and beauty. The cross, an instrument of Roman torture and execution, is transformed into a sign of peace and life. Both symbols represent a warrior God who wins by losing. He doesn't defeat his enemies by killing them. He defeats enmity itself by allowing the violence of the world to be absorbed into his own body. Super duper cool point is the Ruach and the last breath. In the flood, the Ruach, breath of God, brings the waters down and restores life. On the cross, Jesus yields up his spirit. You'll never guess what word he uses. His Ruach. The new creation that started with Noah is finally completed in Genesis. The breath that dried up the earth in Genesis 8 is the same breath that is given to the church in John 20:22. The war is over because the king has taken the hit. That's all I got.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I think so too. That's why I call it the super duper cool. All right, let's end with a prayer. Father, we love you, and we thank you so much again for this time that we've had to study your word, study more about you, and to hopefully learn something new about who you are and your character. We are so thankful for God that takes the punishment upon himself, that puts the bow in the clouds pointed not at us as a threat, but at himself out of love. We ask that this idea helps transform how we view you and how we view your people as image bearers. God, I pray